This meeting is being recorded.
So yeah, as I said, welcome to this CPD session today on supporting service children in education. My name's Natalie and I'm hosting today on behalf of the SCiP Alliance, but I'll introduce myself, and Phil's here as well to introduce the SCiP Alliance in a little bit more detail very shortly. Just a couple of housekeeping bits first of all. As I've just said, the session is being recorded today, so if you wish to have your camera off, that's absolutely fine. If we can just ask that everyone has their audio on mute unless you're presenting, just to minimise any background noise during the session. As we are recording today, and obviously we have slides, those will be emailed to you after the event. So for your reference, there will be a Q&A session at the end, so there will be some time for discussion then. But also throughout today, there is the chat function, if any of you are unfamiliar with Zoom, so please feel free to join in any of the discussions and things that are going on during the sessions today. So yes, great to see you all here today. We've had a brilliant turnout, so we're really, really pleased with that. Just a quickly reminder of the agenda. I know everyone is very, very busy and you might have signed up for this a little while ago, so I'll just quickly go over this. We'll start off today with a little bit of an introduction from myself, Jenny from NICO, as well as Phil from the SCiP Alliance. We'll then move on to looking at what it is actually like to be a service child. So we've got Alexandra Stokes from the RAF Family Feds joining us today, as well as two lovely student ambassadors from our local universities, which is brilliant to hear from them. We'll then move on to Kath Florence, who is going to be presenting the Thriving Lives Toolkit, which is a toolkit designed specifically to help you to support service children within your school settings. Hannah, my colleague, will also be presenting a short session on using the Service People Premium effectively. And we've also got a case study from Joyce Franklin Academy with us today as well. We'll then have some breakout rooms, which will be on various themes, talking about what support you can offer to service children and any outside organisations. Then we'll have our Q&A session and the closing. So we really hope you find today useful, and hopefully you'll go away with lots of ideas to implement in your schools. Just a little bit of an introduction first of all. Today is hosted by the SCiP Alliance. However, I am actually part of Make Happen, which is a UniConnect partnership. Some of you might not have heard of UniConnect before, so I'll just give a quick introduction to what that organisation is. So the UniConnect is funded by the Office for Students. It's a national programme of outreach to support students to going to higher education. So the aim of UniConnect and all of the partnerships is to provide impartial advice and guidance to students about going to university or college, and includes things like degree apprenticeships as well. Our programme covers all state-funded secondary schools. I know we do have a lot of primary schools with us today, so unfortunately we don't currently work with primary schools, just the secondary schools. And there are 29 local hubs that deliver all of the activity under the UniConnect banner. I work for Make Happen, which is one of those 29 local hubs. So we are based in Essex, working with Essex, Southend and Thurrock area to deliver outreach activity. We have a team based at the University of Essex, and we also have staff based at Anglo-Ruskin University in Chelmsford as well. So we provide bespoke activity for schools and colleges. We have coordinators in a large number of schools and colleges across Essex who work with the Make Happen officers to design bespoke programmes based on a progression framework to make sure that we are giving students all of the information and support that they need in order to decide whether higher education is the right pathway for them. We do also provide large-scale projects, events and activities that go across the county. So for example, this Saturday, we just actually had a Lego family day at the University of Essex in Southend, which was brilliant. So we do lots and lots of different things. It's not just through the schools and colleges, although a large majority of our work is done in that way. We also offer online events for students to sign up to, or parents, or teachers as well. We always have lots of different things going on. So if you're in the Essex area, please feel free to check out our website. We're partnered with all of the local authorities in Essex, as well as our local universities, as well as the University of East London, which is slightly outside of Essex, but very close by. And we really love working with all of those partners to make sure that we can offer truly impartial activity to the students in the local area. I'm just going to briefly hand over to Jenny O'Hare, who is our who's from NICO, which is one of the other local hubs.
Thanks, Natalie. And yeah, I don't have an awful lot to add to what Natalie said there. Everything that Natalie said about how Make Happen works in Essex is probably equally applicable to how NICO, the Network for East Anglian Collaborative Outreach, works in Norfolk, Suffolk, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So like Make Happen, we're a partnership of universities and further education colleges, and our staff are employed by all of the institutions. You have their logos on the slide. So I know here today we've got staff from UEA, University of Suffolk. I'm employed by the University of Cambridge, and we've got somebody from ARU as well, I think. And those institutions all employ staff called higher education champions. Lots of different terminology here, but those staff are based out in schools and colleges, mostly working with secondary schools and colleges across Norfolk, Suffolk, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, doing a lot of the same stuff that Natalie and her team are doing in Essex. So yeah, just the same really. We're a collaborative partnership, and we're about progression to higher education. Back to you, Natalie.
Thanks very much, Jenny. So today's CPD we worked jointly with NICO in order to produce today. So yeah, that's been really awesome to work with them. So I'm going to hand over to Phil now, who is from the SCiP Alliance. He is the director, and he will be giving us a little bit more insight into what the SCiP Alliance is and how they can support you. Over to you, Phil.
Hello, thank you very much, Natalie and Jenny, for the welcome and the opportunity to speak to colleagues in your part of the country. We're really pleased to be able to help you to get stuck into this issue. Many of you will be really experienced in supporting service children. Some of you may know very little. I'd suggest one way of us getting a sense of each other is if you just use the chat to share something about where you're from. If you're from a school, how many service children do you have? Is it a primary school? Is it a secondary school? Perhaps your school has a high or low proportion, or serves mainly the RAF or military children from the Army or the Navy, or a mixture. Just feel free to share some of that with each other so you get a sense of who your colleagues are in the room, virtual as it is, but also just to help us to understand the kinds of settings that you're working in, and then we can do our best to help you to make the most of the tools and services we've got on offer. I'm trying to get the screen to move on. Good, it is working, great. Oh, I must have clicked that twice, sorry. Let me say very quickly something about the Alliance, but I really want to get stuck into what we do. So just a quick little note here about the fact that our vision is for thriving lives for service children. We're focusing today on school settings and education and the range of factors around education in the classroom, I suppose, that add to their progression, to do with, you know, well-being, socio-emotional factors, all those kinds of things that make a difference, as you know, as education professionals, to success. But the ultimate goal is thriving lives, and that's a really important thing to say. We take an asset-based approach to that. So we're very much not from the starting point of problematizing children or identifying weaknesses. We want to identify the strengths that young people have and help them to make the most of them. But we're also not ignoring the fact that there are challenges. I think the thing that's important to me is that When we're talking about children and young people, the challenges I take responsibility for removing and help the children to focus on what their strengths are and how to make the most of them. We're the adults in the room. It's our job to try and remove the barriers so that the children themselves can thrive with the skills and talents and interests that they've got. The way we go about that is just essentially by bringing people together. The research we did in 2018 said people wanted to be better connected with each other, with evidence and with support. And everything we do is designed to get to that end. I'm going to say a little bit today about the what and the why of the SCiP Alliance. And in short, the why is a bit about why do we need to do anything at all, but it's also about what change do we want to see. So I'll cover that very briefly. And also the what is essentially what do we do towards that end. And I also want to give a little bit of attention to how we go about that in terms of the importance of collaboration, which is why I'm so thankful to Nico and to Make Happen for hosting us today as the hub hosts in this part of the country. The first thing to say, I think, is that the need around service children is characterised through what we call the 4 Ds of service children's lives. And they are diversity, discontinuity, development, and disadvantage. It's one of those moments, BBC News moments.
Daddy,
I'm afraid I'm in a conference, my love, talking to lots of people. Can you go down and ask Mum to help you?
Daddy,
Thank you.
we need to stitch it up.
There you are.
We need to stitch the front bit up.
That's right. See if you can go find Mum.
But I'm going to stitch it up now.
Steph. Down. It's St David's Day tomorrow, and he's dressing up in traditional Welsh dress and seems very proud of it. Sorry about that. I tell you what, here's a good place to start. Like all children, service children are unique. Just like my 2, service children are unique. And that means that they have huge potential and that they can benefit greatly from service life as well. And that's what I was saying about the importance of taking an asset-based approach. But the evidence is also that they are less likely to access higher education, they may attain less well, especially if they do a lot of moving, and they can have a lot of hidden challenges, and they're often hidden because of the nature of the culture in the military, but also because of their mobility and separation. So I want to say a little bit about those through the 4 Ds. The first one, diversity, is just a fact of that uniqueness of each individual person. But it's essentially, if you think of service children as like any other child with all those uniquenesses, added on top of that, a variety of layers that are highly individualized through separation from parents. And that comes in lots of different forms, depending on actually not just the branch of the military, which have different patterns in general, but also individual roles within the military can have an impact on the nature of the separation you might experience. And also mobility, moving between schools, which is probably the kind of the headline that most people would refer to when they think about service children. But it's important to recognise that that again has huge diversity. Some moving in large groups as a whole unit every couple of years, others moving in what are called trickle moves, just as a family, as their roles change and the needs change, and some not moving at all. So huge diversity there. And then finally, what's often forgotten is the process of transition out of the military, which have significant impacts for the serving personnel who are leaving, and for spouses and for children therefore as well. But what is also interesting is that the interrelationship of those things makes it a very difficult thing to generalize. And one of our key messages almost all the time is that we need to get as close to the individual as possible. It's best to think of the interplay of these things as more like a smoothie than a fruit salad, where you might be able to pick out in a fruit salad the bits you don't like or understand, well, I can taste that because there's some pineapple there. It's not like that. It's much more like a smoothie. When you kind of mix all of those things together, you can get some of those different hints of flavors, but they're entirely different flavor for different people. And if you were to add a few more strawberries or a bit more banana or some more lemon juice in it, you'd get a slightly different flavor. And that's what it's like. Very much more difficult to pull out the different strands of their experiences, and why diversity and recognizing diversity is so important. The automatic result of all that diversity, however, is discontinuity. And at this stage, we're not making any judgment about whether that has a positive or negative effect. One thing which is really important to say is it's just a fact of those experiences that there is discontinuity, and that's in learning and relationships and in opportunities. Some of them are really obvious ones, like moving schools, which could be at short notice, in year, obviously has an impact on the continuity of their access to curriculum. Just moving even from one school to another in the same local authority, which is not so common as moving between different local authorities or even different countries. You can imagine easily, I'm sure, the impact that can have on your learning. It's not uncommon for children to be moving 8 times or more, perhaps doing the Vikings 5 times and missing an entire chunk of the maths curriculum. So you can see that that could have a potentially massive impact on learning. Also on relationships, and that's both with peers. Often very mobile pupils are having the experience of having to make and break friendships repeatedly, and that can have an effect, as you would understand, on their willingness to invest in new friendships or to engage in learning or engage in opportunities as well, which is the third one. The thing to say about opportunities is something that people often don't think about, and certainly one that I wasn't aware of until we got into the details of what the research is telling us, that if local provision like Cubs or Brownies and Scouts have long waiting lists, then you can imagine that mobility has a big impact on the likelihood of engaging in those. Or on the continuity of provision around music lessons or sporting and other kind of extracurricular activities. If they're broken up, your opportunity to advance, to get into leadership roles, to build relationships and to sustain your development can be affected. So that's kind of simple facts. It's very diverse, highly personalised, and that creates discontinuity. And then the bottom 2 things here, the potential exists for that to create development opportunities. And there's some evidence that says service children may grow up more adaptable, more independent, more mature. Undergraduates we've spoken to are often, not always, those that are best prepared to really thrive at university because they're quite used to going to new places and making friends easily, standing on their own 2 feet, I guess is one way of putting it. But it's really important to say that we can't generalize about that. And I'm always nervous whenever we hear statements like service children X. There is no such thing as the service child experience. There are as many experiences as there are service children. And that's essentially where it's important that we recognize that there are a range of potential disadvantages that come from that discontinuity because of the diversity of service children's lives. We've talked a little bit about some of the impacts also of discontinuity in learning and relationships and opportunities, but in the long term, they mean an underrepresentation for the whole cohort, and we need to do much more work to understand the breakdown within the cohort in terms of their access to higher education. In terms of attainment, if you move 4 schools 4 times or more, then attainment has a particularly big impact. There's a particularly big impact on attainment. But that really, again, if you think about that, sometimes we only know the answers to the questions we ask. So when DFE look at their data on that, they've been able to identify numbers of moves and the impact it has on attainment. And 4 is a really big indicator of when there's a significant drop off. It's also true that for children with special educational needs, there's a significant impact. And that, again, it seems it's associated with the difficulty, if you're more mobile, of identifying a special educational need, and then obviously go through the process of understanding what provision and putting in place provision to help mitigate the impacts of that for that child. And so, yeah, indeed, I remember to a service child recently. We have one engaged in our management group who's pointed out that a particular special educational need just wasn't picked up at all because of the mobility they'd experienced. Their schools, professionals never had the time, the opportunity to get to know students really, really well. And also then around mental health and well-being, there are loads and loads of things for which there are indications and different degrees of strength of evidence about the impact on mental health and well-being. The Children's Society work suggests it's much more likely to be you're more likely to have caring responsibilities if you're a service child. We've seen evidence from a variety of different sources that you might well be more likely to feel like you don't belong in a school setting, that you might be more prone to be a recipient of bullying. And again, like I said, these are not general experiences, these are specific experiences, and so are not necessarily the norm. But they're things that we need to be aware of and seek to do something about. That's the big picture, I suppose, of the why we need to do something, the experiences of service children's lives. And how we go about that is, as I said, connecting people better with each other, which is essentially this partnership element of this slide, but also then with evidence. How do we translate what can be difficult to access research evidence into accessible changes in practice. And with support, and that's essentially where the tools come in that we produce from evidence, from the needs that practitioners have identified. And the best example of that is the Thriving Lives toolkit that you're looking at today. The other answer to the question, why do we do something, is obviously so that we can change things. I'm a great believer that if we want change, then we have to change. If we want change for young people, that's something we have to do differently. There's no good just hoping things will change if we don't think about how we need to change what we're doing. Like I said, the way we go about that is through those three elements, and the examples of that are captured here. Sometimes I think the biggest impact we have is in just bringing people together to be able to share their understandings of different worlds they work in. Connecting the military world with the education world is a really important one, but also enabling people like the partners in Make Happen and NICO to collaborate around an agenda, and us providing some research evidence and some intelligence and some tools to help direct that so that it's as effective as it can be. And that's where you get Creative Forces Days having such an impact, but also the work we do with policy, helping UCAS to improve their guidance to service children. We've been working with them on the introduction of a self-identified tick box in UCAS applications, so service children can say, I'm a service child. And also, of course, having a big impact on the Office for Students, who now recognise service children as a target group as a result of the research we've done. So that's the big picture. So when you get your glass of wine or whatever else it is, and you spend your evening enjoying our theory of change, this is what you'll be looking at. I want to encourage you just to give some time to reflect. We haven't got long today, so I've only given you a little overview of what the big picture is about service children's lives, and hopefully through the 4 Ds, a simple way of thinking about it. One of the things people tell us that we do, which is really useful, is finding a simple way to understand what can be very complex things. We've been said that we're good at slapping some simplicity on complexity. And so hopefully that's what the 4 Ds do for you. If it's you with responsibility talking to colleagues or to new partners in your schools and in other settings, then the 4 Ds give you a simple way of trying to explain the facts of service children's lives and how that may or may not impact on individuals, but hopefully providing the evidence for taking a really personal approach. So I wanted to encourage you, given that today we haven't got time to have lengthy breakouts at this point, just to reflect on those 4 Ds and perhaps share some thoughts in the chat with one another, just so you get an opportunity to reflect back where you've seen some of that discontinuity, the evidence of diversity, and possibly even the positives and the negatives, the development opportunities and the disadvantages that you might have seen in your own work, just as an opportunity to network with each other. While you're doing that, I'll just move on and say a little bit something about one element of our work, which I think is the most important, which I've referred to a couple of times already. And that is that the biggest thing that I think we can do is help connect the thousands of professionals who have a stake in supporting service children to work together more effectively to reduce duplication and to improve the impact of their work on service children's lives. And essentially the heart of what we do, the way we do that, is through the Hub network. And the East Anglia Hub is a really fantastic example of that. And the most recent example, our 12th Hub. So huge thanks to the hosts for the East Anglia Hub. The shorthand of what hubs do is that they help partners do together what they can't do alone. So you should be expecting to engage in the hub and both get something from it that meets your needs and influence it so that it changes in a way that helps you. Hubs are the collection of the people in them. There's not a definition of exactly what a hub must do. Hubs have a purpose, and how they go about it needs to respond to the area in which they're working and the partners who are in it. So expect to add value to a hub and to get value from it. The other thing I want to reference to you is that there are a range of tools, as I said, that we produce and we curate in order to help you to do that. And a really good example is the Thriving Lives Toolkit, which you're going to look at in detail. Another example online is the online targeting tool, which you'll be able to see. Here are some screenshots of. In advance of today, I just took some screenshots of the NICO and Make Happen areas to show you what the service child population looks like. And this uses the Department for Education's data on service pupil premium. It's worth noting we have a different definition of service children that is a little broader than the department. They're, without being too cynical, perhaps focused a bit on the financing of service children's support, and so a broad definition of them costs the Treasury more money. So they have a narrower definition than we would have, but by that data, and it's the best data that's available anywhere, you get a real sense of the scale of the population. 8.5% of service children are in this area in the country in total in England. But we have just today launched the updated version of this. Each year we get new data from the DfE, and it's just gone live today. And I had a quick check before coming on to see how the figures have changed. It's really interesting because it says that essentially overall the numbers have gone down, but in your area the numbers have increased slightly. But it's worth saying probably they're pretty much exactly the same. But the thing that's very interesting, sorry, they've decreased slightly. They're pretty much the same, but they've decreased slightly. But the proportion of schools they're in has gone up. So you've got fewer children, only a few less, but they are in more in terms of the proportion of schools in your area. So more schools have a stake in this agenda than they did last year. So it's really important to note that. And hopefully you'll find the tool is a really good way of getting a sense of our overall population and the scale of the need, but also how it differs between local authorities, which is why collaboration is so important. You've got some authorities which have very large numbers, as you'd know, like in Norfolk and in Suffolk, and of course smaller local authorities like Peterborough or Southend-on-Sea, where there are very small numbers. But the proportions of schools they're in is different between different local authorities as well. The other thing worth saying about collaboration is that this is where different stakeholders add value, is that we have general data on the numbers in total, but local authorities through census data have these numbers specifically. And you and your schools hopefully will know exactly how many. So being able to build those one-to-one relationships with partners is the best way to improve support for service children. That's a quick summary of the kind of things you can get from the tool. If you go online, you can choose a number of local authorities, compare yours with another, add them to a comparison report, download a report if that's helpful to you, going to governors and reporting on the context you're working in, or getting buy-in from partners by using the reports to show that there is a need in your particular area, as well as the differences between local authorities. So that's something I wanted to refer to. The only other thing I wanted to refer you to is the kind of work we do in helping to gather what good practice looks like from across the network. And a good example of that is the Listening to Learn report, which was the summary of our Year of the Service Child Voice. It's an example of one of a few. We've done one more recently on further education, and we're just commissioning some more research in that field. But it's a really good example of how the Alliance does a job of gathering not just examples of practice from across the network, but also trying to understand, are there some principles from that practice that we can then share, how we can slap some simplicity on the complexity of different ways. And there's a really good example here from Dr. Michael Hall, who is a researcher with the Alliance, which gives some good advice on how to go about doing really good listening. And you can see identified 4 principles, which you can read a bit more about in that report. It's not a long report, a few examples of practice, and then a very short summary of what it means to be deliberate and be open, be child-centered, and be willing to change in your listening to service children. And essentially, that's it from me. I think you might be saving Q&A to later, so do that if you want to, Natalie, Jenny, as you wish. But otherwise, I hope that's been really helpful. I'll be around to help out, answer any questions you've got.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Phil. It was really great to hear a little bit more about the SCiP Alliance, and hopefully people have a bit of a better understanding if they haven't heard of all of the fantastic work that you do before. I'm just going to go into our next session. So we're going to now be hearing from the RAF Family Federation, who work to support families in the armed forces, as well as our 2 student ambassadors. So hopefully getting a taste of the smoothie flavour that those 2 people have experienced as a service child in education. But we'll be starting off with Alexandra, who will be giving us a little bit of an overview. Let me just transfer control over, and Alexandra, you should be good to go.
Hi there, thank you, Natalie, and thank you for inviting me to join this CPD session. Just going to check that I can advance the slides. Oh, I don't seem to be going across at the moment. One moment, give it a second, see if it moves over. Oh, there we go, fantastic. So my name is Alexandra Stokes. I'm the Policy Advisor for Education and Childcare for the RAF Families Federation. But today I'm going to be speaking to you representing the 3 FamFeds. There's the Army Families Federation, the Royal Naval Families Federation, and the Air Force Families Federation. and I'm going to be sharing information on Armed Forces family life and giving you an insight into the experiences of service children. There we go. So before I start, I thought it'd be helpful to just share a little bit of information on who the Families Federations are, so that you're, if you haven't heard of us before, we're independent organisations, and we independently share the voice of service personnel and families. We present evidence to the armed forces, the MOD, local government departments, local authorities and other stakeholders, and we're able to provide confidential information and guidance for service personnel and families, and signpost different organisations and support to help service families. We work holistically with other key stakeholders and work to influence policy to improve the quality of life for service personnel and families. So what is unique about Armed Forces family life? Well, Phil talks a little bit about it, and some of the themes you may see are repeated here. There's a notion of service first, that military life doesn't just affect the serving person, it's the whole family as well. And the MOD have recently published the Armed Forces Family Strategy, which is looking at this and is looking to develop different work streams, one of which is education, looking at how service children are supported. So one of the things that's unique to service family life can be the mobility. And as Phil mentioned, depending on the service and the trade, the role that the service personnel has, this can impact on the amount of mobility a family may experience. Some service families can move houses as much as every 18 months to 2 years. For some families, they're a little more settled and maybe in an area for 5 years or so, whereas other families may choose to settle in one location, and the service personnel may move around with work. So with mobility, as Phil mentioned, there's some challenges can arise there. For example, with school changes, children may experience a repetition of curriculum. They may develop gaps in their curriculum that they've missed if they're moving. If they're moving to the devolved administrations, there may be different curriculums and different admissions times when children are starting school. So there's different challenges and opportunities can arise through mobility. Deployment can take different forms. So there's non-operational and operational deployments. These can be within the UK or overseas. And they can be for a variety of reasons. For example, it could be exercise. Service personnel could be going away on exercise. They could be doing training courses, or they may be deployed overseas on operations. The frequency and length of deployments can vary greatly. Some people can be sent away for a couple of days or a few weeks. They can last months. Occasionally, they may be 9 months or longer. And the length of them and the frequency of the tours will depend on the role the service personnel has and the service that they're in. Can be different. COVID has had an impact, for example, on deployments. Service personnel may have been deployed for slightly longer than usual if they had to isolate in an area when they arrived, and then also sort of repeat when they came back isolating. So COVID did impact on the length of deployments for some service personnel. For deployments, again, it can vary. For some deployments, you may have a long notice period when you know that the service personnel is going to go away. You may know exactly how long they're going to be away for. However, it can be that you have fairly short notice postings or deployments, and families, you need to put things in place to be able to manage that. Separation. So separation can take on different forms. As I mentioned previously, this can be for training, families living apart for different reasons. So for example, if there's a dual serving family, they may be living nearer to one base. So sorry, dual serving would be where both parents or carers are serving in the armed forces. Could be the same force, could be different forces. And they may choose to live within one base, and the other service personnel could commute or perhaps stay throughout the week in a different location. And also separation, we have the deployment, which we mentioned about, can be different lengths and frequencies. And obviously these three items will impact on service children in different ways. We will look at that shortly. So here we've just got a case study to share a bit of an insight into what one family has experienced as part of Armed Forces life. So it says the spouse was married to somebody serving in the armed forces, and over 19 years, this shares a little bit of information on their experience. Just give you a moment to read some of these points. So some of the themes are that, for example, it mentions there about childminders. So before children have even started school, they may have had several different early years settings, nurseries or childminders. Mentions there 6 schools for the children. And then we come on to GPs and dentists. Sometimes families do encounter challenges when they're relocating, for example, accessing an NHS dentist. Sometimes families can encounter challenges with that. With GPs, and that's another consideration, is things like transfer of notes and support that families are having with regarding different medical support they may need. And again, towards the end, it mentions about friendships, moving away from friends and leaving friends that they've made along the way, leaving friends behind and sort of keeping in touch with some lifelong friends. So that's just one example. And as Phil mentioned, every service child will have a different story and have had a different experience. So that's just to give you a flavour of some of the experiences that service families may have. So Phil mentioned earlier about diversity, and this diagram here has been created to help illustrate the different elements that can impact on service children, and to show that they are not a homogenous group. And there's different areas there mentioned about diversity, home, parental absence, moving schools, and some of these things, it just shows all the different elements that make up the service child, the different that they are such a diverse group. Couple of points I may pick out for there where it says about parental absence. One of the themes there, it says weekending. So weekending is where a service personnel may be away from the family during the week and then come back at the weekend. So this may be if a family have chosen to settle in an area and the service personnel's moving around, and they may come back at the weekend to stay with the family. So it shows all the different facets, the different elements that can impact on service children and young people. There we go. So you will be receiving a copy of this in the slides. If you want to take some time to look through it in more detail later, then please do. Again, yeah, with moving schools, it highlights some of the themes that may impact the children you're working with. For example, if they're moving schools, losing friends, trying to stay in touch with old friends, and also making new friends. The lack of continuity of the curriculum, which Phil mentioned earlier, and access to extracurricular activities may be different. There we go. So we mentioned some of the challenges that service children may encounter and experience as part of service family life. But here I thought it was really important to also bring out some of the positives. And in a recent survey that was completed, 69% of military spouses said they were satisfied with their quality of life being married to a member of the armed forces. And some of the positives, some of the opportunities that service children can experience as part of being an armed forces family include experiencing different cultures and backgrounds. They may have the opportunity to travel overseas or to different areas of the UK and experience different cultures and learn about different cultures, different backgrounds. There's often a sense of community that's often something that's shared with us when people move to a new location. There may be an opportunity to make new friends. Some families will be living nearby other service families with children that have had similar experiences that can offer support. That's not always the case if some families choose to live off base perhaps, or if they're in a location where there are very few service families. Some service personnel mention about the development of skills and report that moving around helps develop independence and maturity, and things like resilience can be developed for service children as they're moving around as part of service family life. So how are families supported and by whom? If you're working with service children in schools, I thought it would be helpful to share some information on some of the organisations that can support service children and also support schools if you have any questions or there's any challenges raised with you. So how can we help to support you? Each of these services have its own Families Federation, and I'll be sharing the contact details of both the Army Families Federation and the Naval Families Federation with you at the end. And we we have to support the single services, but we do work together and collaborate to support service families and personnel. In the devolved nations, there is support over there. We've got Forces Children Scotland. There's support in Wales from SSCE Cymru. There's also support in Northern Ireland for service families. And if it's helpful, very helpful to signpost those organisations and point of contacts if it's of interest. For example, if you have a family moving away to Scotland and it would be helpful for us to share information with you and with the family, please do feel you can get in touch and we're happy to share that information with you. There's a variety of military charities that are set up to support service personnel and families. A couple that I thought I might draw your attention to this afternoon are Little Troopers and Reading Force. And I'm aware that both of those organisations are looking to share resources for the month of the military child, which some of you may be considering getting involved with in April. So there's lots of resources out there to support schools and service children. And if you'd like any further information, please do get in touch. There's information on our website, but also happy to support if you've got any questions. There's networks across the UK. So SCiP Alliance that Phil spoke about earlier. There's also the Service Children in State School, SCiS. That's a network of head teachers and school staff that are working to support service children, and they've got lots of information on their website, lots of good books that you might like to use. If you've got, for example, a nurture group, they've got lots of good books that could be useful for that. There's also the Veterans and Family Research Hub at the Anglian Ruskin University that's doing lots of research into service children and to support service families. Within the services, there's support from the MOD, the Armed Forces Families and Safeguarding Team, and Defence Children's Services. And each of the single services also has support networks. So there you can see we've got Royal Naval Support and People Support, Army Welfare Support, and the RAF Community Support, which uses SAFA for their social work. So lots and lots of different organisations that are working to support service children. So if you do need any information or any support on that, please feel free to get in touch. So the three family federations do surveys and polls and create reports on what it's like, the lived experience. So for example, you can see down there last year, the RAF Families Federation completed a survey on childcare to look at the lived experience and provision that service families reported to us. And there was information there about that some of the challenges they reported, which we fed back to the MOD, looking at how we can help to influence policy and improve life for service families. So if you'd like any further information on that, then lots of information is available on our website. Thought it'd be also useful to just share a bit of information on other support from the Families Federations. We do support with education and childcare, which has been our focus today, but there's also lots of other support that we can offer to families. And if you are aware of a service family that's encountering any challenges, for example with health needs or housing, please feel free to signpost the Families Federations to them so we can offer support. We do produce quarterly magazines, and there's an example of each of them from the three services. We also have e-bulletins that we send out with up-to-date information, matters that are impacting service families. It could be about signposting resources to schools or to families to help with educational matters. And if you're interested, then you're very welcome to go online and subscribe to our e-bulletins so you can receive this information if that would be of interest. There we go. And there we have the councils subscribe to the magazine. If you're interested in subscribing to the magazine, please do get in touch, and I will speak to our communications team. It's predominantly for service personnel and families, but I'm very happy to look into that. So sorry, the message has gone from my chat. I can't see who it was that posted that, but please, if you would like to subscribe to any of the magazines, do get in touch, and I will see if we can supply those to schools. I don't believe we do a standard, but whether, if that's something that you'll be interested in, please do get in touch and we'll see if we can accommodate that. But they are available online. We post them out to families and they're sort of delivered on the service family accommodation blocks, patches. But yeah, please do get in touch if that's of interest, and feel free to look at the online versions that are available on our websites. So there we have contact details for the education childcare specialist in each of the Families Federation. It's Becky Lovell for the Navy, Anna Hutchinson at the Army Families Federation, and then I am the policy advisor for the RAF Families Federation. And just want to welcome any of you who do need any support. Please feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you so much for joining this session. It's really helpful to be able to come along and speak with you today. And if you've got any questions, I believe hopefully there'll be time at the end of the session for you to ask those. Right, I'm just going to hand back to Natalie. So you can hear from
Thank you.
children.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. I think one of the key things that's really sort of stood out so far, just from the couple of speakers that we've had so far, is that sort of diversity theme. And we're really hoping today that you get a taste of what some service children's experiences could be, just to sort of start thinking about how we can better support those students as individuals. And you know, that will be dependent on your school context, your location, and those individual children's experiences as well. Which leads us nicely into our student ambassadors. So we're going to be hearing from Chloe and Nkaruka today, who are going to tell us a little bit about their experiences as service children throughout their education. Chloe, are you able to sort of kick us off with, it would be really great to just hear a little bit about how being a service child has impacted your education, whether in a sort of positive or a negative way.
Hi, yeah, of course. My story is quite a long one. I have been a military kid, or still am technically a military kid. My dad is still in the RAF. I've been since about six or seven. Yeah. So like I said, my dad's still in the RAF. I have actually got notes down because I go off on a tangent and I'm a nightmare. So
that's absolutely fine, no problem.
Too slow, you know. Yeah, so I actually have two younger sisters. They're 4 and 2. My the 4-year-old is currently in primary school. She just started. She's actually at a military primary school, or like one that's basically on camp kind of thing. Yeah, I didn't realize how many people like from everywhere, like all across the UK, so it's kind of amazing to see everyone here. So yeah, I thought I'd do this to sort of help better my sister's education, really, you know. Yeah, so it's a long one, I have to say. I do apologise. So I'm originally from North Yorkshire. I've been up and down England. I've been to, where's my dad been based? Dad's been based Bryce Norton. He has been based in RAF Lynham as well. I don't know if you know that. And he's now based in RAF Marham. And we've also been to RAF Lehman as well. So literally here, there and everywhere. It's crazy. So when I first started out, I was living in North Yorkshire. Dad was doing his training, so straight away commuting. I didn't see him unless it was on the weekend. It's quite difficult as a kid. Don't really remember my primary school days, unfortunately. I didn't realise how many primary school people would be here, so my story is definitely high school related. But yeah, commuting a lot of the time. He was back on weekends, but you know, I never really saw him. It's one of those things. But I think it was just more, you know, you sort of deal with it, you know. It's not really something that you sort of remember as a kid. I don't remember it, so I don't really think, like, speaking to other people, I don't think they would remember it either. I don't know, and I don't really remember having much support or anything. It was a long time ago now. But yeah, so our first posting was in RAF Lynham. I was about 6 or 7. The primary school was on camp. We've lived like on the outskirts of camp and things like that, so being at a primary school that has been sort of near camp or around camp has been good, because they sort of get it, you know. They have a lot of, they're in touch a lot more with sort of like the military, and you know, they have people, like a lot more military kids, so it is really nice. And you know, it's sort of like a nice atmosphere to be around as well, because everyone sort of understands where you're coming from, which is good. Yeah, and then my dad got a promotion and I was then at RAF Bryce Norton, so I went to a school called Watchfield. I was there I started at the end of year 3 and I didn't leave actually until I was at high school. So I left high school from there at about middle of year 8, the end of year 8, which is fine. Couple of things to make, this is where it gets complicated. So I think if I mention a couple of these things now, hopefully we can all stay with me. So yeah, I did dual languages. I did Spanish and German in this secondary school, and also English as well. And I was living at this place at the time for about 5.5, 6 years. So the people that I was with in primary school, I grew up with from that period of time, and I was in high school with them. So it was lovely. I was in the same form groups and everything. It was brilliant. Quite close with them. And I met a wider variety of people. It was brilliant. The school I went, the primary school that I'd just come from as well, was an international school. So people were coming and going anyway. So it was quite easy to sort of make new friends. My confidence definitely built. And it was clear to see when people would sort of join and how shy they were. But I feel like as a military kid, you do sort of understand that sort of shyness. So you do find, well, I think from my sort of perspective, I was going and saying hi to the new people because I sort of knew where they were coming from. I think you might find that. So if you already have a military kid in your school and you're having someone new, even if it's, you know, someone who's not got a dad or a mum in service, if you sort of get them to go and sort of meet them, I think they'll understand a lot more where they're coming from, help them feel a bit more at ease, that sort of thing, which would be good. Yeah, and then I left. It's just one of those things. It was fine. I ended up leaving. I went to my second secondary school up in North Yorkshire. It was brilliant. I was quite excited. Like I say, I was used to it. Fine. I was there until the end of year 9, starting year 10. I'd just picked my options, and I was doing German at the time because they didn't do Spanish. They did German and French. So I did German, I did history because it was a humanities school. I did DT, so I did textiles, and I did, I don't even know what I did. I did drama, that's what I did. Yeah, so I chose my subjects and it was great. And then all of a sudden I was leaving in the middle of year 10. And I'm not gonna lie, it was very difficult. I remember Dad coming in and he was just like, yeah, we are moving. And I was like, oh, here we go again. Like, I was starting my GCSEs, it was very stressful, and it's a lot of pressure as a kid as well, because GCSEs, it's, you know, I feel like you do get pressured when you're doing your GCSEs and things. So we moved and I went to my third secondary school. It was the most nervous I'd ever been, not only because it was my third secondary school, but I was a lot older. People had formed their friendship groups. They were in so much, they had loads of friendship groups that here and there and everywhere. And as a girl as well, I feel like in primary school you get like a lot of arguments between girls, and it's gossip and it's drama here, there and everywhere for a girl. So sort of joining that, it was kind of, I was really out of my depth, and it was the worst I'd ever been. I was so shy. I was just not how I am today, like as confident as normal. Yeah, took a big toll on my confidence. But I did have a tour prior to starting, which was actually brilliant, to get my grips around that first, because I didn't really get a tour in the previous ones. So it was nice to sort of know my way around and trying to socialise. It was great to sort of do that. And then it came to my options. Obviously year 10 it was GCSE. This is the really complicated part. So I just found out I couldn't do my options because the school didn't provide it, and I think it was something to do with the fact that they were in the same block or something, and then they couldn't provide one of them because there was no teacher for it, something like that. So I had to do completely different subjects. It's worked well in my favour now. I'm a secondary student midwife, which is fab, but I did child development and health and social care. So that's one thing. The next thing, it was also a humanities school. Brilliant, fine. I did history. Yeah, it is. Yeah, sorry, I've just seen someone's popped up on the chat. Yeah, it was really, really difficult. I think it's really weird to sort of say it, but I think it is kind of true. Like as a female, it's just gossip and drama. So sort of coming into that, yeah, it was quite hard. yeah, so it was humanities, brilliant. So I did history, and they didn't do German. They did either French or Spanish, and this was a GCSE topic. And so I had to pick Spanish because I had a very slight bit of background information on Spanish. So I had to do Spanish as a GCSE. I did manage to drop it, luckily, because I anxiety everywhere. It was crazy. And then history. So in the secondary school before, I did history on Black American history. So Martin Luther King and American history just from the 1920s onwards. I then came here and I found that it was a different exam board. It was Excel, and I'd gone from AQA to Excel. And apparently, I don't know if it's true or not, but Excel is the hardest exam board like ever. I thought it was as well, because I've been doing marking criteria from AQA and it was very, very different from Excel. So I had to sort of retrain my brain into doing marking schemes for Excel. Very hard. But I then went from doing that sort of history topic to a different syllabus, which was 4 completely different things: American West, Elizabeth I, World War II, and medicine management, all throughout, you know, the centuries. So very, very difficult. And on top of all of that, like, if, you know, just I'll throw another one in there. They did their GCSEs. It was a 3-year-long GCSE course, and I arrived in year 10. So they picked their GCSEs in year 8, and I'd missed out on a year of education on my GCSEs. So when I was doing child development and health and social care, they were actually on their coursework. I hadn't learned any of it. I was just doing coursework. It was basically learning on the spot. It was ridiculous. I was a wreck, complete wreck. I was so anxious, having missed a whole year of education and learning a new exam board, missing curriculum on my English topics because they were different as well, missing curriculum on my maths as well. Complete nightmare. But I had one teacher who helped me through everything. I had a massive breakdown. I remember I just burst into tears. I fell to the floor and she just sat me down and she went, "Your fly's undone." And that was it. That was it. I was just so, I just ended up laughing. It was a mixture of emotions, but she really, really helped me. It was really, really lovely of her. Like, honestly, teachers don't get enough credit. It's amazing what you do. And I think it's really difficult as well, because in that school, that's all they've ever done. That's all they could teach me. So the fact that they felt helpless as well, and how apologetic they were because of it, you know, it was a situation that I was in. I couldn't get out of it. I had to do it. Yeah, and it was just pressure on top of everything else. It was ridiculous. I felt like I couldn't revise at home at the time. Olivia, which is a 4-year-old now, she was newborn, so she was up all night, and it was very hectic. And my dad was on tour. He was away at the Falklands for 4 months during my GCSEs. So it was literally one on top of the other. And it is very true when they say every story is different. I don't think this happens to everyone. It will probably never happen all the time. Like, my situation is just the cards I was dealt with, really. But it is just really nice to say that my teachers got me through it, really. And it was fab. I didn't have any support military service based wise, mainly because I don't think I was aware of it. If I was aware of it, I think maybe I would have gone for it. You know, the support there would have been great. Yeah, I do have a couple of sort of like suggestions or like things for people to remember. I don't know whether that would be useful.
That would be perfect. I was going to say it would be really thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. It's really interesting to sort of hear how that sort of changed as you've got older, and obviously the sort of added stress of essentially missing out a year of school. When it comes to sort of exams, you're suddenly thrown into different subjects, and although, you know, the subject might be the same, actually the content is completely different. And yeah, hats off to you basically for dealing with that. And you've obviously got through it and have managed to achieve what you wanted to do. Obviously now that you're at university, which is absolutely brilliant. And I think that sort of probably speaks volumes about you and maybe the support you had as well from some of your teachers. But yeah, it would be really lovely for the sort of people that are here today. I suppose what's the most important thing that you would love this brilliant group of teachers that we've got with us to take away and to help the service children that are within their schools?
Okay, yeah, so it's basically just sort of reiterating what the presentations have been saying, but definitely things to remember. I don't know whether people are aware of it, but when a kid moves to a new place, when I move to a new place, it's very hit or miss with the amount of military kids that are there, mainly because of like people being posted to new places. So when I move onto a street, either the street is full or the street is empty. And that is literally based on people being either promoted or moving to different places. I think at the moment, my parents' street is empty. And I think it will start to fill up again during the beginning of school holidays. So they try to sort of incorporate it, that you move during school holidays. That's what the military kind of do. It's what's happened with me. I moved during like half terms and things like that. So I think they try and like accommodate the best way during that. So yeah, just sort of try. I think it's a good thing to sort of remember, because it might be that they've met loads of military kids already that are at the school, or they haven't met anyone at all. We're kind of already isolated because of that as well. I think isolation is something that is quite a big thing. As a military kid, I was an only child up until my sisters were born. So it was literally like Three Musketeers, me, mum and dad. Like it was just us. That was what I knew. We moved here, there and everywhere, yes, but it was literally, they were the only people that were close to me. We were also away from family, obviously originally from North Yorkshire, so everyone there is in North Yorkshire. We'd have like 5-hour journeys here, there and everywhere. So we are literally away from our families. That like another thing to remember. What else should I write? I also wanted to mention about technology. So as a kid growing up, I used to go out to the park and I would literally just sit on a swing until someone arrived to meet someone. I think now, because technology is so big, people aren't gonna, like, kids aren't going to do that anymore. They'll sit on an Xbox and play. So sort of like meeting people organically isn't really going to happen unless you're in school. I just sort of wanted to mention that, just because technology is forever growing. So I think that's quite an important thing to sort of say. And the amount of pressure that you put on students during GCSEs, I know it's really important. But as a service child, obviously from my experience, it was very much full on. It was a lot more different, but there was still so much pressure that it got to my breaking point. I broke. So yeah, just sort of how like wording, maybe how you deal with it. It is important, yes, but sort of taking things into consideration. You guys are brilliant though, so honestly, I honestly couldn't fault any of you guys. In terms of like suggestions, I was thinking maybe, especially in primary school, like a pen pal system. I don't know if you guys already do that, but I was thinking, if you know that a service child is coming to your school, maybe providing some sort of like pen pal system between a student and them, so that they at least know someone when they're there. I remember going to a school, I was so nervous anyway, because I didn't know anyone. So maybe doing that, it sort of breaks the ice a little bit. It'd be quite good. Also maybe like a taster day. I never had one, but maybe like a couple of hours in the school, sort of getting to know everyone before you actually officially start school. That would be quite a good thing to do as well, maybe. And like during the taster days, maybe like giving like allowances of being late and things. I remember it was my first day at one secondary school and I was told off for being late, and I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't know where I was going. So maybe like things like that. And being like more mindful of when parents are away. I had, during my GCSEs, like I said, my dad was on tour. Obviously no one knew. It's really difficult if no one knows it, but it was hopefully like, if it's definitely like a communication thing between the student and you as teachers. So I think if we can communicate that our father is away, and it is quite a stressful moment at the time. My mum had a newborn and it was just here, there and everywhere. So like things, support in place during school time would be brilliant. I also remember having, because of my GCSEs, I was at after school clubs literally every day. I was there 5 days a week, and there was no transport on a Friday. My dad finished on a Friday during lunchtime, luckily, so he managed to come and pick me up for science. So like things like that, just being able to have like some sort of transport available, because when I live on a military camp, there's no buses, there's literally nothing. You have to be driven everywhere unless there's a school bus. There's literally no way to get out. So socially as well, that's something as well to mention, like you can't leave unless you're driven out of there.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Chloe. It's been really great to hear about your experiences, and thank you so much for sharing. I will also just point people to the chat, and Phil has helpfully put some links in there to some research that's been done, which does sort of echo what some of the points that Chloe has mentioned. So I would definitely urge people to sort of save those links and look into them later. Yeah, they're definitely really helpful. So thanks to Phil, and thank you to Chloe also for sharing that. And Karuka, it would be really great to hear a little bit about your experience. I know some of the things are sort of similar. I know that you moved around a lot sort of and things when you were younger. But yeah, it would be really great to hear a little bit about your experience as a service child and how that's impacted your education.
Hello, Natalie. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm much aware of the time because I've just narrated my story with Natalie, and I'm very much aware of the times. Therefore, I wouldn't take much of the time. I would like to give time in case of if there's any activities that Natalie wants to complete before 5:30. Right. As a service children, even though I'm not a child, but my experience as a child, as a service child, was very, very diverse. It's a long one, but I have to make it as brief as I have a positive experience, I have a negative experience. In the first place, as a child, I grew up in a very big family. We're up to 9 in a family, my mom and my dad and my siblings. So we are quite a large family. So on top of that, from a service background, our dad is we are always on the move. We are always mobile from one military to another, from one barracks to another, from one city to another, from one village to another. You know, it's just a lot of movements from year to year, from month to month. If I can remember, the highest we have stayed in one city is 2 years. After that, we always moving, my mom, all of us. You know, is that something that I can be proud in a way? I know it's the job my dad chose to, but in a way, as a child, I don't find it funny. But the positive side of it is that it makes me to be social. It makes me to be resilient. It makes me to be, you know, a kind of a community ties, because each area we move, we make friends so easily. In the schools, we make friends so easily. Among the teachers, they love us, you know, because the moment they knew that we are service children, me and my siblings, they give us, you know, a kind of respect, not treating us differently, you know, not giving us any preferential treatment, but you know, they have that confidence that we are much disciplined, which we have demonstrated in every cities, every schools we have been to. We are much disciplined because coming from such a background, our dad is a very, very disciplinary. You can never doubt with him. His yes is his yes, his no is his no. So that made me, you know, to build me as a very hard working woman. Anything I want to achieve, I set my goal, I set my desires. Even as a student, last year I won a best student award, you know, best students of the year. I won such an award, so I found it so honorable that, oh wow, if I can do it, that I don't know that I can do it. So all my life I've been winning award. Any competition I enter, I not because I am, you know, I'm a genius or because of my academic prowess. I don't even know, you know, it just come natural. It just come natural. I've won an award of a best poetic writer in 2016 in this country. You know, I just came into this country. I had the education in my home country, but when I came into this country, I found it, you know, quite different from my education system in my home country. So for me to adapt it, I found it, oh, I don't know how I can make it, but it's all about the resilience I had from my background as a service child. We never give up. Me and my siblings, we are juggernauts. Anything we set our eyes. So, but on the other hand, coming from that background is very challenging because I can't remember how many days in a month our dad has stayed with us. Either he is in a war front, he's in a barracks, he's in one deployment, one cantonment, he just like it. So that made me, when I saw my mom suffer, suffering, struggling as a woman with lots of children, I said, oh my God, my mom. So that made me to step into as a mother in a very young age with my older brother in a very young age. Both of us, we stepped into as a mother, as a father, in order to support my mom. To be honest, this is not what I really want to enjoy. That made me, I didn't enjoy much of my childhood, days. Not by way of a penalty or suffering, no. But, I wasn't so happy to see my mom struggling about that. But on the other side, me and my brother, my siblings, my sisters, we really achieved a lot having come from that background. Even in our schools, the teacher, they supported us. So I am encouraging teachers, it is best thing to do to listen to them, to include them, because some of them, I understand that some teachers are horrible. The moment they see that they're from service background, they have concluded, they have assumed, they have judged them that, oh, there might be horrible children, there might be, stubborn children because of their backgrounds, their dad, because going to war. So all those negative prejudice is very bad for some teachers. I am encouraging teachers, accept them, welcome them, remove that barrier. Don't see them as stubborn children. Don't see them as difficult children. Accept them as a children. You see, respect them. Talk to them. They will listen. They are not violent. They are not stubborn. They will not harm anyone. Don't take because of their background that you had that their mom or their dad are service people. No, they are most disciplined people. I don't know, it's my experience. I understand it is specific and personal, but most of the service children, they are very disciplined, they are very trained because of their background. They know that they will not mess up, because if their dad or their mom tells about it, they know the consequences. You see, so never mind. Some teachers are trying, but they need to do more. There is other ways of inclusive, including them. They should be felt inclusive, diverse. Not when you have judged them, when you have ostracized them, that they are not welcome. That made them to feel low, to draw back, instead of them seeing their teacher as their friends, as people to talk to, people to trust. They see some of their teachers that they don't care. There is no point of talking to him or her, because they will not listen. Rather, they will even be worse. So I know I am where I am today because of the support I have from my teacher, support of my mother, my father. Even though my father is always in the barracks, in the war front, in one cantonment, in one deployment or the other, but the moment he's around, we always feel his presence. You don't misbehave, you don't do anything silly. So teachers, please do something. You can do better. I trust you people. I am so confident of teachers. I came from a teaching background as well. From my background, I have lots of teachers around me. So I respect teachers. They are doing a lot. But please, for the service children, do better. There is better to do, more activities to create for them, more fun to create them, more curriculum to include them. they really need inclusivity. Once they are included, they will do better in the school because they have lots of skills, lots of potentials. Having been on mobile, most of them all their life, they have been on mobile, on transfer, on deployment, one areas, they gain a lot, they have a lot of exposure, lots of skills, lots of talents and potential, which will be harnessed if they are welcomed into the system. Just as I said, I'm mindful of the time because I have a long story as I have that.
Yeah, it's unfortunately
Natalie. I have a lot, but I am so mindful of the time. I would like to go further. Thank you very much, Natalie, for this opportunity given to me.
Thank you, Nkuruka. Yeah, I think, you know, I feel confident in saying that obviously the people here, I hope that obviously with your maybe some of those more negative experiences that you had with teachers, you know, I really hope that that's not something that that children in this country do experience, and I feel confident saying, you know, obviously the people here today, thank you so much for giving up your time to make sure that the children that you work with don't experience anything like that, and obviously feel free to spread the information to your colleagues, and also the fact that the Thriving Lives Toolkit, which Kath will speak to us about in a moment, will do exactly what Nkuruka is sort of looking at in terms of making sure that everyone has got the information that they need and some ideas as well of how we can support those service children. So thank you so much for Nkuruka, and it was really great to hear those positivities that came out in terms of, you know, your social confidence and the skills that you learn from being a service child in terms of your resilience, self-motivation and the discipline, which has meant that you've been able to succeed, which is really wonderful to hear, and sort of similar from Chloe as well. So yeah, so thank you so much for your experiences. I'm really sorry that we can't hear more from you both, but yeah, thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Natalie.
Yes, so we'll be moving on now to having a little look at the Thriving Lives Toolkit, which Kath will be speaking with us about, and implementing that into your school setting. So I will hand over to Kath.
Hi everybody, thank you very much, Chloe and Nkuruka. That was really, really interesting, both of you. Thank you for being so open about all your experiences. I'm going to see if I can move on the slides. I'm going to I'll try and make up some time. I'm going to explain the background to the Thriving Lives Toolkit. We'll look at one of the principles and think together about how you can apply the 7 principles of effective support in your school. We'll have a good look at the toolkit, and I'd like you to kind of share your ideas, and then we'll take that a bit further in some breakouts later. Okay. I'll start with the background. The SCiP Alliance, as you've heard, has a large network right across the UK, and we collectively realised that while there are lots of informative resources out there, you heard quite a bit from Ali about that, there's loads of things out there. The support needs to be accessible to that diversity of school contexts. You've all got very different contexts. I could see from the chat messages and from the mapping that Phil showed us earlier. And we could see that a framework that would support schools to access those things, to think through, any school to think through their provision and think about what else they could do and develop their practice would be a really good kind of addition to what was already there. And as Phil explained earlier, everything we do is evidence-based. We wanted it to be based on rigorous research. So we worked with ICEGS, which is the International Centre for Guidance Study at the University of Derby. And they did quite a comprehensive review. They looked at the literature. They spoke to lots of different schools. The survey reached a lot of schools, and then they followed up on that with in-depth qualitative case studies, focus groups, interviews. They spoke to leadership, staff and children, and we were really careful to include a balance of different primary and secondary schools, different numbers of service children. As I could see in the chat messages earlier, there's a real difference there, and the different armed forces branches as well. So they spoke to all those people, they took all that evidence, They engaged specialists who have a background in kind of using various research techniques to bring that through into a kind of framework for reflection. And they came out with a toolkit that we're going to have a look at, got kind of principles and then some self-reflection questions, all of which are based on what they found in this research. And we've recently extended this across the UK and also done an evaluation of early adopters' experiences and then updated the toolkit again on the basis of that. So the toolkit that you can see on our website and in your delegate booklet today has gone through quite a long process. It's got a lot of evidence behind it. And then there's been this kind of, sort of looking at how people use it and updating it as well. And you can see that they, the researchers, they used all that information that they got from their research, but then they also took it and they reviewed it with key policymakers, and that's been done right across the UK, as well as all the testing. I'll move fairly quickly on. Here are just a few of the quotes from the, they spoke to the Ministry of Defence, Department for Education, Office for Students, Ofsted. Ofsted said that it chimed with their framework, which was quite nice. I'm trying to kind of not go too, sorry. So this slide kind of sums up where the toolkit came from. It's that diversity, the distribution across the country and in different schools of service children. And that's why we've got this framework posing questions for consideration rather than a list of actions to take. And reflection on those questions with the support of the training suite, which I'll also show you in a moment, and the wider SCiP Alliance community that Phil alluded to earlier. That will help you to develop your own practice in your own unique context. So this is page 10 in your delegate booklets. And that reproduces the whole of the toolkit. You can also download it on our website if you just want the toolkit on its own. It uses the research's 7 principles, as I said, with accompanying vision statements that you can see here. And it lays out what effective support might look like. I'll go through them, but let me know in the chat which ones stand out to you, which ones do you feel you're doing, where do you think you've probably got some things that you can build on, where do you feel confident or less confident? I'd be quite interested to hear what your reactions are. So principle 1, our approach is clear, is about clear approaches right across the school, resources, policies. Principle 2, well-being is supported, is about making sure that there's tailored pastoral provision supporting mental health and well-being. Principle 3, achievement is maximised. That's about teaching, assessment, support, all being consistent and ensuring continuity of learning and progression, and hopefully mitigating some of the things that Chloe was talking about earlier. Principle 5, children are heard, is incredibly important. And again, we've heard quite a bit of about this already this morning. Those diverse voices actually being heard and informing the support that they receive in school so that they feel heard as well. Principle 6, parents are engaged. Again, that's really important, those partnerships, particularly with very mobile children, so that they feel valued, the whole family feels valued and part of the community. And then principle 7 kind of underpins all that. Staff are well informed, and of course today is a good part of that. We've numbered them 1 to 7, but they're not hierarchical. Principle 1 might be the starting point. Principle 7, of course, is critical to achieving the others. They're all parts of the overall jigsaw of what highly effective schools do to support the education and the welfare of their service children. So I've chosen to just look quickly at one of the principles. Transition is effective. This is something that's really resonated in previous conferences, and of course it's come up already today several times, and it clearly has had quite an effect on our speakers earlier. There are challenges, some of them universal, supporting young people with adapting and managing friendships. The different school starting age, for example, impacts young children if they're moving even just between the different nations in the UK. And then the curriculum gaps and misalignment that Chloe was talking about earlier for older young people, of course. The toolkit, as you can see from this slide, presents the evidence from the research and some examples, some quotes from people that the researchers spoke to. Effective schools in this particular principle have a robust and supportive transition procedure both for entering and leaving the school, particularly at non-standard times. I thought it was interesting that Chloe said, oh, they make sure we move kind of within a holiday at half term. And of course, that's still mid-year. So there needs to be careful provision for that. And then you can see it down at the bottom right here on the following page, the user is going to be asked to rate themselves as either emerging, so just reflecting and implementing some actions, coming along to something like this, for example, developing, making strides in addressing that question, but yet to embed it in regular practice and evaluation, or whether they're embedding, whether there's a programme of established, monitored, evaluated work with evidence of impact. And then the next page kind of structures that for you. You've got the questions that came out of the research. So these are kind of self-reflection questions. It's not a kind of a test, it is just for internal self-reflection. And you can use that to kind of review the school practice under this principle. You're prompted to consider your current practice, to read the question and think, what evidence do we have in our school? Maybe starting off by looking at those middle three columns and reflecting on the extent to which you feel the school is emerging, developing, embedding. And then there's space to record evidence for that judgment and to think about actions and deadlines and things. So the questions for principle 4, transition is effective. They're kind of prompting reflections around identifying service children, working through the long process around a move, providing a bridge with other schools, as Chloe mentioned that earlier, I think, and data. And both academic and pastoral support. I think we'll move on, but in your booklet there is a little space for you to kind of record your reflections, so do take some time to do that, but I think we'll move on so that we come on to the discussion groups, which I think are probably more important. You could use that to maybe jot your thoughts down while you're in the discussion groups. I just wanted to quickly mention that the toolkit is guided by these fundamental principles. They're things that have kept coming up today. Partnership, the fact that it's asset-based. We start with those strengths that we heard from our two lovely young people talking about that. There are massive strengths that service children do have. And also that it is very, very evidence-led. Teachers told us that it would be useful when we went out and piloted this. They said, well, that's great, but then we need some resources. Where do we go once we've done our assessment? And they said it would be helpful to have this kind of 3-tier suite of initial things. If you look at our website, there's a link here, and I think that the slides I think have already gone out. You can look at a quick animation that just gives you the basics about what the evidence says about this principle. And then tier 2 is some really in-depth narrated PowerPoints, so that anyone that has engaged with that first level or come to a conference like this, you can then get a really good level of understanding of the key information around this theme, and each theme's got one of these. So it goes through the evidence, the context, policy information, and talks really in depth about experience and examples from practitioners, what it looks like in terms of pupil experience. So I'd really recommend going onto our website and having a look at those. And then on that site, there's also this third tier, which is sharing examples of practice. We're going to hear from us about some later on, but we've got lots on our website, a bank of case studies, and they're all on the website to go and have a look. And they go through in quite a lot of detail about what schools have done, both with Service Pupil Premium or applying for various other funding that's available. And I'm really excited as well to share with you that next month we're going to be launching an online version of this. So all those things that I showed you in those kind of tables and stuff, that you'll be able to go online, have an account and save and share content, download reports, maybe to take to a governor meeting or to show to Ofsted, and you can track and update your actions and evidence there. So that was quite a whistle-stop tour, but I'm quite aware that, as I said, I do want to get onto the school case studies and the discussions later on today. So I think I'll hand back now, and I'm around for questions if anyone wants to put questions in the chat or anything. And also, as I said, let me know what you think.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kath. As Kath said, there will be the opportunity briefly in breakout rooms to discuss the Thriving Lives Toolkit a little bit more. I think in the chat, there's the link to the delegate booklet, which has got all of the information about the Thriving Lives Toolkit. We're really hoping that from today, this is only like the very starting point of your journey with this, and we're really looking to support you, all of us, all of the organisations that are here today, to implementing this and sort of moving forward with the way that you work with your service children. So we know there is a lot of information today, so I hope people don't feel too overwhelmed, but we're here to support you to implement all of those things. So yeah, thank you very much, Kath, for sharing about that. What we're going to have a quick look at now, we're going to hear from Hannah, my colleague from Make Happen, about the Service People Premium, and we're very fortunate to have Melissa with us today from Joyce Franklin Academy, which is an Essex school, and how they have used their Service People Premium effectively. So I will hand over to you, Hannah.
Brilliant. Fantastic. See. Thank you, Natalie. Sorry, I had a bit of a pause there. I thought it wasn't going to move on, so apologies for that brief pause. So just quickly, I'll rush quickly through this to get to the case study, which Melissa will be sharing with you, which Natalie just mentioned. But the Service People Premium was introduced by the Department of Education in April 2011 as part of the Armed Forces Covenant. State schools, academies and free schools in England can access the Service People Premium for students in school years between reception right up to year 11. The amount of Service People Premium a school can receive is £310 per child, and this premium enables schools to provide extra support, mainly pastoral support, to their service child or children on roll at their school. So the eligibility criteria is as follows. So one of their parents is serving in the regular armed forces, including pupils with a parent who is on full commitment as part of the full-time reserve service, is registered as a service child on a school census since 2016. One of their parents died while serving in the armed forces, and the pupil receives a pension under the Armed Forces Compensation Scheme or the War Pension Scheme. Children have to be flagged ahead of the autumn school census deadline, which I think is really important to note. And service parents need to make the school aware of their status by talking to the head teacher and school admin staff ahead of the start of the year. So Service People Premium versus Pupil Premium. Quickly just get these slides up. So most importantly, the Service People Premium is not to be combined with the main pupil premium funding, and that spending of each premium should be accounted for separately. Whereas the main pupil premium is to be spent on attainment raising activity, Service People Premium is to be used for targeted support for those mobile service children who need additional help, such as, for example, class catch-up, which I think Chloe sort of highlighted in her talk earlier on. It's also worth noting that Ofsted may ask for evidence during inspections on how schools have spent their Service Pupil Premium. So this isn't a definite, but they may ask you. So keeping a list of what you've spent the premium on will help prepare you if you are ever to be asked by an inspector. So in terms of the recommendations on how to use the Service Pupil Premium, will heavily depend on how many service children you have at your school. So for example, you may only have one service child, whereas another school may have up to 40. If you're a school with a high number, then you may wish to use the Service Pupil Premium on recruiting for a dedicated learning support assistant or on themed visits and outings, which may cost more money. Memory boxes and half-termly social events for parents and children work well for those schools who have a lower number of service children. So for the next couple of slides, I'm going to hand over now to Melissa Garnham, who is the Service Children Liaison Officer at the Joyce Franklin Academy, and who has very kindly agreed to talk about her role in a bit more detail and what the school is currently doing to support their service children. So Melissa, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, so I'm Melissa Garnham, and for the last 9 years I've been working at Joyce Frankland Academy in Newport in Essex. Predominantly, I started as Service Pupil Liaison Officer. My role has expanded somewhat since then, but it's one thing that I keep and I fight to keep. For me, it's my baby. The then principal came in, was looking at what the needs of the service children were. We have local barracks who are Royal Engineers at bomb disposal, so slightly different to other battalions in that they don't move as a whole. We have trickle postings, so one family will go out, one will come in, and it creates a different feel. There's also, he felt at the time that the social emotional needs, the multiple moves within primary school. So we've got children that have been to as many 8, 9, 10 primary schools. When they come to us, our local barracks are quite good. They tend to keep them for a lot longer. We're witnessing, however, at the moment, post-COVID, we're expecting quite a lot of moves this summer. Mid-year admissions, lack of information coming in, the lack, as everyone has said, the lack of continuity with curriculum, and the loss of information. When a child has been through that many primary schools, the information gets lost, whether it's child protection files or academic files. So having the liaison officer, one of the things that I started doing is basically when a new child comes in, backtracking through all their schools to make sure we have all the information. Our mid-year admissions policy and system is very robust. I meet everybody, and this is extended out across the whole school. So we have mid-year admissions where I will meet the family, the child, make sure they're in the right form group. If they're moving in the summer holidays, I can then put them in touch with other people on camp. So a year 9 girl, I can put her in touch, put some other year 9 girls in touch with her and say, look, go knock on the door. This girl's moving on to camp, she doesn't know anybody, so that they've got those sort of contacts before they start school. Another part of my role, so I'm pastoral support for all the pupils. So I'm named for the pupils, I'm named for the parents as well. So they have that single point of contact for any pastoral needs or concerns, whether it's then me feeding to the SEN department, feeding stuff onto teachers. I also do monthly meetings with the barracks welfare officers, slightly lacking at the moment in that we're waiting for a new officer to be appointed, but just building that monthly contact with the barracks. And then if there's an issue on camp, we get told about it because we know there's going to be a knock-on effect within school because there's always fallings out. I also do the transition meetings for the year 6s coming up for our 2 local feeder primary schools. So again, embedding with the children that there is somebody there for them when they start secondary school. And I also represent the academy at barracks events. Quite nice things like cocktail parties and things, which is always nice in the summer, but doing that. We have a member from always a senior member of the barracks staff is a governor. So we have a link governor as well. And another thing that I will do is if a family is looking like they're going to be moved during GCSE years, retention letters so that the family and the child can stay in the house. Dad may go, but they can keep their housing until the end of that key stage. It's just having that named person so they know that there's someone there that's got their back. That's sort of it, really.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing that, and thank you for agreeing to talk today at such short notice as well. It's so much, that's massively appreciated. I believe as well you mentioned that you would be happy for me to share your email address in the chat.
Yes, of course.
So that's what I'll do shortly. I will share Melissa's email address in the chat. So if any of you have any questions regarding Melissa's role or the work that the school is currently doing with their service children, please do email Melissa directly. So I'll now hand back over to Natalie.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you so much, Melissa. I think that importance of having that dedicated support. I think even, you know, if you've only got one service child in your school, which I know that a lot of the schools in our local area certainly do have those lower numbers, having that dedicated person to make those social connections, chase up those records, it just seems to be really, really important. So yeah, thank you very much, Melissa, for sharing that and for allowing Hannah to share your email address. That's brilliant. What we're going to do now then is we are going to go into our breakout rooms. So Hannah, can we go for 12 minutes, please? So yeah, we're just going to pop into the breakout rooms, mainly to discuss the Thriving Lives Toolkit a little bit more, and also on Make Happen and Nico for those relevant schools. So we'll see you for Q&A, a brief Q&A at the end of the breakout rooms. If anyone does have any questions that they would like answered before leaving, that would be really great. If anyone has got a question, either pop it in the chat, or you can do a little sort of virtual hand up, and we'll see if we can get a couple of questions answered before the end of the session today. And we will be sharing some points of contact as well. I can see Kath has popped her email address in the chat. There's obviously the SCiP Alliance website, Make Happen Nico for those schools, as well as on the slides, which Hannah will send out at the end of this. There is all of our contact details on there as well, including things like social media and things like that. So if anyone does have any questions, thank you so much everyone for sticking around. I know I'm sure you've all had long days. But if anyone's got any questions, it would be great to pop those in the chat, or as I said, a virtual hand up would be brilliant. We do still have our student ambassadors here as well, so if anyone's got any questions for them, or Kath and Phil sort of on the Thriving Lives Toolkit. Oh, sorry, I can see someone's got a raised hand. Is it Bal?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Brilliant. Hi. Yeah. What's your question?
My question is about a lot of the pupil premium children. I'm a pupil premium lead at in our school, and obviously services children come underneath that remit. I was wondering whether there's any kind of resourcing for governors as well, because obviously the governors hold me to account or regarding services, or should do. Have you got any resources which are purely aimed at governors and how they can ask those questions and champion the work of service children?
I'm going to hand that over to Kath and or Phil.
From my perspective, Kath will certainly add some value to whatever I say. The toolkit itself, I think, is worth having a look at, because there's reference to governors and how some of the things that are important to consider in terms of how school leadership responds to this agenda. So actually looking at the toolkit and reflecting on those questions with governors would be useful, and Principle 1 particularly focuses on that. And the same is true of some of the training online. There's reference to governors as well, specifically there. Kath might know of some specific governor training that exists separate to that, but there are some that are in development. We know that our Oxfordshire hub is led by someone who has a particular interest in supporting governors' improvement. So if things come along, we'll certainly share that. Do you know anything more, Kath?
No, that's a pretty good summary. And a lot of, I have heard anecdotally that schools do, they print that out. The governors, they'll do it at governors' meetings, they'll use it and kind of go through it in governors' meetings. The other thing to say is that we have had workshops at some of the previous conferences like this, specifically for governors, and those are recorded. I'll put a link in the chat in a minute to some of the recordings of those workshops. Good question though.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you
it's something we're thinking of putting together, some specific tailored advice. I'll
Great.
put it in chat in a minute.
Thank you. Someone's also put in the chat, could we have an email when the toolkit goes live? I assume that means online.
Yep, so we will let you know as a hub, Natalie, and then hopefully you can, if people are given permission for you to come back to people from this, then hopefully you can do that. Also, if you sign up on our website to be on our mailing list, we'll be letting you know through that as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kath. Emma Collier. Oh, I think
I've done it.
There we go.
It was a question about working with local garrisons. Melissa might be able to answer this. It's sharing information, because sometimes I have students who I might want to speak to the local garrison about, and I'm not sure, I mean, legally where we stand on that, or whether it's, you know, so it sounds like you work quite closely with them, and I was wondering if anyone else, you know, often had meetings with garrison welfare teams, or how much information they shared, or whether or not we can.
I think it can be a little bit of a grey area.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if it's anything to do with safeguarding, then that trumps everything anyway. And it's a lot of the stuff I discuss with welfare officers tends to be around general feelings on camp. Our camp can be quite cliquey.
Right.
Some of the families that have been there for a very long time, you get the hierarchy within the families as well. And so it's just having that overview of what's going on. But we've had incidents where there's been very poor behaviour on the school bus, and it gets some of the kids involved get off at camp, so it's labelled as being a camp, as it's the kids from camp. So I've had meetings with the commanding officer, who will then haul in parents and say this needs to stop. And
right, okay.
We don't tend to have, the parents will take it, because there's very much the view, if they're in school uniform, they're representing the school, but they live on camp, so the kids are representing the army as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
we get the odd parent who is a little bit like, well, you don't have this with civvies.
Yeah,
no, we don't, but the kids aren't representing the army.
Right. Yeah,
so we do tend to just go for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. I think Phil's just answered that. So someone asked if the toolkit was available. So the toolkit itself is available, but the online fancy sort of dashboards and all those sorts of things, that's about to be launched. But the toolkit itself, that's within your delegate booklet. So you are able to access the toolkit. It's just not interactive at the moment. So that's the difference between the sort of the toolkit itself, which, thanks Phil for that link, it's also in the delegate booklets, but the sort of fancy interactive version will be launching soon. So you can use that now and refer to it, but it's more of a PDF sort of style. But there will be a brilliant, I've had a little sneak preview of it, a brilliant interactive version which is launching. So yeah, your delegate booklet has got that information in as well. Does anyone have any sort of last questions? I'm aware of the time, we're just a couple of minutes over. If anyone's got any sort of burning questions, otherwise obviously there's lots of contact points have been posted at various times, and Hannah will also send round. Any last questions?
I haven't got a question.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I haven't got a question. It's just, having waffled very quickly at you earlier, I think the importance of having a named if you have service children in your school, the importance of having a named person cannot be underestimated. I think just if parents and kids know there is one person that is interested enough to have that role, it can make an enormous difference.
Thanks, Melissa. I can see Chloe is nodding very vigorously as well along with that. So yeah, that's brilliant. That's a great note to actually end on as well. So yeah, thank you so much to remaining participants. I really appreciate you giving your time up to learn more about service children and how to support them. We'd really appreciate if you filled out the evaluation for the event, just so that we can use that to obviously inform events in the future. and please get in touch with us. All of the details will be shared with you via email, but there's sort of, you know, the general websites and things like that. But yeah, thank you so much everyone for attending, and I hope you had a lovely evening, and yeah, hopefully we'll speak with you all soon. Thank you so much everyone.
Thanks
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.